Hello, and welcome to Critics and Cars Getting Home.
This evening, we're on our way home from the premiere screening in New Zealand of Air, directed by Ben Affleck and starring a little bit of Ben Affleck and a whole lot of Matt Damon, Ben's best friend.
A whole lot everywhere, because he's put on a belly. So we don't have any idea what we think of this movie, really, because we haven't talked about it. But just to be clear about what it's about, it's the story of the people at Nike who brought the idea of the Air Jordan into being.
In 1984.
A time when Nike was far from dominant in the basketball market.
17%. They had 17% of the running shoe market. No, that's not true. They
basketball
had
shoe
17% of the basketball shoe market,
yes.
Although they did have the lion's share of the running shoe market, but they wanted to branch out into basketball. So it's all about real people. It's about the real Phil Knight, played by Ben Affleck, who was the CEO of, founder and CEO of Nike. And the various fellows, including Jason Bateman and Chris Tucker and Matt Damon.
And Chris Messina, and playing Michael Jordan's mother, Viola Davis.
Oh, she was amazing.
Amazing, and playing Michael Jordan, the back of some guy's neck. And that's a very deliberate decision. I know that Ben Affleck had made him saying, look, this is not the Michael Jordan movie, because he talked with Jordan a lot about making it.
Yeah.
Incidentally, Jordan was also the one who suggested Viola Davis for his mom.
Yes.
Who, which Viola Davis can do anything, so that's not a surprise, but also she's fantastic. But anyway, so what did you think of it?
I thought it was really enjoyable. I thought it was very informative. So there's been a bunch of sporty type movies, like, what's that one? That one, Moneyball, and
yes.
Sporty kind of movies that are talky, and there's a whole lot of white men in them, usually based, at least in part, on real people, talking about money and kind of business, blah, blah, blah. And I found this really interesting, and sometimes it's quite funny as well. Like it has a lightness to it. And also, I will say, I do respect fully the fact that it's a total period piece, and if anything, it probably overegs the period pudding, because it uses every single prop from the 1980s or the mid-1980s just to hammer home that that's the period that it's set in. But at the same time, Matt Damon, paunchy and middle-aged and a horrible middle hair parting, and Ben Affleck looks a fright, and so I really admire the lack of vanity there. But I didn't think it was, I thought it was very, very good, but I didn't think it was a film that I would bother to watch again in the way that Argo I would return to, and I've seen at least 2 or 3 times and would like to watch again. And I mention that because that was one of Ben Affleck's earlier directing outings.
Yeah. Well, it's a very, so he originally directed Gone Baby Gone, and then...
Which is a really good
it's still my
thriller,
favorite film of his.
But it's based, obviously, on a novel.
Dennis Lehane, yes, and then The Town, and then Argo. And so
The Town is really great because it has that element of mystery around it, doesn't it? Whereas this doesn't have mystery.
No. My point is that it's a whole change of pace and tone. And it's one that does... He's maybe not quite as naturally suited to as a director. I did feel there was a lot of editorial egging the film with 80s music cues and things like that. But I think I liked it more than you did from the sounds of it, though. I do think that it might be a film I return to, and I think there's a lightness to it that does work more often than not.
Yes.
It does occasionally get in that kind of 80s cosplay that is a thing, but it does also there's actually a whole skeleton key to the movie as they're talking about what's kind of a throwaway thing about Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, about how it sounds like an uplifting kind of song, and it's actually about a guy who's come home from Vietnam and can't get a job. And in that, there is sort of a tension between what's kind of a caper with gratuitous swearing from agents and other sorts of period details, but then also kind of the serious issue about how athletes had been really exploited, and that's something that actually there's a lot of tie-in, as Ben Affleck has also talked about, in with the Actors Equity, or not Actors Equity, excuse me, his new production company, which is called Something Equity, and it's about different ways of financing films that get people more on...
Artist Equity, it's called.
Artist Equity.
And
yes.
So, and this is getting a bit behind the scenes-y, and you may or may not want to read up on this, and it's interesting that he did it, but you're right, the story of this film which boils down to we want to make a lot of money and create a shoe that everyone will want to wear, but we also want to acknowledge that actually it's about the person who is the image behind the shoe to some degree, which at the time was apparently an innovative kind of concept, 1984. And flip, 1984 suddenly feels a very long time ago. You know?
Well, yeah.
And yet, I tell you one thing. I looked at the shoes that people were wearing, and of course we've seen those all come round again. And so the shoes actually looked kind of modern, but of course they weren't modern. They were modern at the time, and they're contemporary of now because people are wearing the same. You know, there were a couple of girls in the screening just now, I noticed when we came out, and they're wearing the classic Nike Air Jordan shoe, you know.
Sure, and I mean, if you're not going to wear it there, where are you going to wear it? But it also does speak to
everyone's wearing Nike.
The enduring nature of the design as well.
Yeah. But anyway, the film. So I think that the cinematographer,
Robert Richardson,
who's been around since the beginning times and is a superlative cameraman, he definitely does some flamboyant kind of almost Scorsese-esque
tracking shots,
right?
Yes.
And that keeps it quite lively. But of course, as you say, that's not necessarily a Ben Affleck decision. That's a Richardson decision.
I mean, the director does tell the camera person where to go. Often the camera person will be more about like where is the light and how do I do this.
But if I had Robert Richardson on my crew, I'd be saying to him, "What would you do? What should I do here?"
No, and fair enough. But I mean, there's a few quite lively moments. There's one quite strange scene that's shot with like all sort of snap zooms and stuff that is unfortunate because it's actually the best acted. Marlon Wayans one scene, actually, I thought he was incredible in.
Yeah.
It's sort of an outlying scene, but you understand the historical importance of it at the end, which, you know, is often the case with biopics, is you have things that
So what do you
be
love
in
about
there.
it then? Because look, I really liked it, and we'll say right now, I'm going to go 4 stars for sure. It's a very, very well made film. It's completely engaging, But what did you love about it more than that?
Well, I mean, I guess the idea that it was trying to work at both levels, and I think maybe it is. Look, I mean, it's set in Portland, where I lived for a long time. It's about a middle-aged white man who hasn't achieved what he wants to achieve in his life and has big dreams, and you know, maybe there's those sorts of levels that it kind of feels like it hits. Yeah, sure. I mean, it is very much, and those are things that people might take the movie to task for, but it is in the sense that, you know, you're wrestling with these issues of representation and telling the story. It's like, well, you know, we're white men. Let's tell the story about the white men who were involved with this and not pretend to tell Michael Jordan's story from our limited point of view. And I think I don't know. I just found navigating the landscape and the within the inevitability of it, I found it consistently engaging.
Yes.
And
see, that's the other thing I was sort of alluding to before. There's no sort of there's not no drama, but the point is we know how it ends up. Yeah. And whereas and you may think this is a bit of a left field comparison, I always remember watching Bryan Singer's film Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, which is about the failed attempt to kill Hitler, and it's the most gripping historical drama, given that we know that he didn't make it. All the way through the film, you are on tenterhooks thinking, will he make it? Will he make it? It's not a spoiler to say he didn't. I think we all know. But this film, well, maybe it is a ridiculous comparison, but the point is we know that Air Jordan happened, so it's a little bit of a how did they get there, I suppose.
Yeah, and I guess I mean I really like the mechanics of it, and it is also like kind of unpacking some of how those relationships work with things like agents and protocols and all of that. And I feel like there's a lot of very intentional mirroring of the way deals are made in the film industry as well, and things like that, and the people behind the scenes who are often underappreciated, like the engineer of the shoe.
Oh, the engineer of the shoe was delightful. I was just gonna chop in again and say, interesting that I should mention Valkyrie, because Tom Cruise and Jerry Maguire was the first time that I had got any. I'm not a sports person, guys. You'll be very surprised to know. So that was the first time I had any concept whatsoever about sort of pro sport, never mind in the US, and let alone things like agents and, you know, deals and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, so I mean, look, I'm not. It's not going to be on my top 10 of the year or anything like that. Don't get me wrong.
It's a very competently directed film. Like good old Ben Affleck, he knows what to do.
Yeah.
I've liked all his films.
So I guess I would say 4 stars as well for me.
But remember, that's 4 Doug stars, guys,
yes.
which is 4.5 Sarah stars.
Yes. So yeah, that's us on air, and we'll see you next time.